All right, so we're dealing with over 231 volts here. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about safety because this much voltage could kill a person, with the combined amps. And what we're going to do first is just full disclosure. If you do this, you do it at your own risk. But let me show you some things that will mitigate the danger. So, obviously, you wouldn't want to touch this battery from the end to the beginning. That would be the highest voltages. You also wouldn't want to work on it with two hands. So if you were to get shocked using only one hand, it would not be so far and it would pass through your hand and not your heart. But lastly, and probably the very easiest thing to do, is you can remove the bridges or not install them. So every one of these yellow connectors is a bridge. And when you see, like right here, two of them, that's actually a dual bridge because we're using a two-piece system. So from here to here is 28 volts, but you can disconnect. There's bridges down here and bridges up here. If you disconnect this just leaves a single battery. So from 2 to 3, you have 28 volts. If you disconnect these two bridges here, then that leaves it between 2 and 3, and you don't have the excessively high voltages. And this is the same thing as if you were working on the original Prius battery. You could just remove those thin copper bus bars, and this would eliminate your voltage. Now, what they've done, you see that fuse all the way back there, the yellow handle fuse. They have a small disconnect between the batteries, and I'll show you that. And what that does is just lower the voltage as well as provide a fuse. So let's get into the build and some of the specs. So I regret that I did not mention in the previous video, these are lithium iron phosphate. They're the safest lithium battery you can use. They've done puncture tests and temperature tests and uh, cross circuit tests, excessive voltage tests. These things are just deemed safe by whoever calls them safe. And having my daughter in here, I wouldn't want anything that would be catching on fire as she sits in the seat right in front of these batteries. So, probably the next thing we have to talk about is shaking hands and being nice with the original Prius BMS. So, we're still incorporating, but instead of a two pair block, we've got actually 5 in series. So, that's this group one. And they are in groups of 2, but that's to handle the excessive amps that can be drawn from this. So this is actually the beginning. This is the negative, and we have a bridge here. It's the only place, this and the very last battery is the only place where we bridge the batteries. Now we do have micro bridges, tiny red wires, and that's to keep the batteries balanced. So there's little red wires. I know, wrong color. Makes it hard to spot. But I have these little red wires in there. They're not to carry voltage, it's just the purpose of balancing. But when we've got to the very ends, I don't want one battery pushing a lot of amps while the other one is trying to push through that tiny cable. So we've got a 10 gauge cable there, and it's paired up with the one above it. And that way, they're both teaming up on this one large diameter cable. Now, one thing nice about the current BMS, I can still use my phone and find out every block. We have 14 blocks. I can find out every block's current voltage. I can find out the temperatures. So we've incorporated the temperature gauges in here, and they're sitting in between the batteries. This one here on one is actually the top temperature gauge. This is the one that goes on the very top of the batteries, and the other temperature gauges I've buried inside. Now, we're not currently using a BMS. I have wired it, but the Toyota's BMS is pretty adequate. And if you have excessively high or excessively low voltages, the relay, which is over there, will disconnect. So effectively freeing up the entire hybrid battery if you have too high or too low voltages, and also throw you that wonderful triangle of death. But all in good fun because it protects everything. So the other nice thing is we've got an incorporated, and this isn't attached because I had to remove the metal cover. We have an incorporated temperature control system. So also, if this battery were to get above 130 degrees on any of the temperature sensors, it again, the relay would pop down yonder. Not pop, but disconnect, and all of these batteries would be spared excessive heat. Having the temperature control system incorporated in this also lends to the fact that we have a blower. So I'm not quite certain when it kicks in, but I have heard some, at around 120 degrees. I've heard the blower. It's hard to make out because it's not very loud, but the blower will help keep these batteries cool. On the negative side of things, having this locked up in the metal battery case, it raises the temperatures. So the fan is kind of a must because having this all locked up, you've got to have fresh air. Otherwise, the temperatures just build and build. Um, so it's hard to make out the actual blower if you're not carefully listening for it, but it does kick in and it does help keep these batteries cool. But on the very beginning, I did run this without a cover, and it seems like the battery temperatures without the incorporated blower system open box are less than the battery temperatures with a closed box and a fan. Now, hindsight 2020, I wish I had um, bought a bandsaw, and I would have used this. There's a shipping cartons, a really nice heavy duty black plastic shipping carton, and I would have sawn those up into thin strips, and we would have placed them around these batteries, and this thing would have been perfectly level. Um, as far as the density, these things have double the density of the original battery. So this battery pack is double the original 1.3 kilowatt battery pack. And while it does look smaller, you see some space over there and some space over here, it is actually heavier. It's about 11 pounds heavier. As far as the battery specs are concerned, the individual battery specs, these are 6,000 mAs, 6,000 milliamps, and their nominal voltage is 3.2. Now, depending on who you listen to, they have a top voltage of 4. I've also heard 3.85, no more than 3.7 recommended, and as low as 2.5 or 2.7. But at 2.5, you will get a voltage of 12.5 at the very, very lowest. And the highest recorded, I've been monitoring these things for about 6 months. The highest recorded highs and lows on these batteries has been around 12.9. Now, that's during a surge. So the batteries aren't actually 12.9. And I'm not talking about these batteries. I'm talking about the original nickel metal hydride. So this, with the surge, the lowest I've ever seen the batteries drop to is 12.9. Now, that's not the true battery voltage, but it's with the voltage drop that's seen. Now, the BMS here is incorporated in the positive, positive, positive. So you'll see like this blue wire here is incorporated, and then the next one is the red wire down in the corner. That's on the sorry, that's the negative. So negative, 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 negative. So it bounces back and forth. And does a little funny thing on 10. It switches from negative to positive. So that's one thing to be mindful of, is the configuration and orientation of that. And I'll show you a little clip on that. But remember, before you do any of this, to record the entire battery setup, front and back. That way, if you come across one of these little oddities, and this is definitely an oddity, you can go with the flow and not have to look for any questions. You just flip to your video that you recorded, and you can take a look and say, oh, they did that. Okay, well, and then so you're still free to go. So that's what it did, and it saved me. Take a look. All right, part of the battery management system right here is the dual relays, for the positive and the negative. And there's also, looks like, a amp voltmeter right here. I did purchase my own, so I'll be incorporating that somewhere in here. But mainly I've been using the BMS that's supplied by Toyota. All right, so incorporating it into the existing BMS. I actually wired this for a BMS, but I'm not using it. I hope to not have to use it. If we have to use it, the only thing we're going to use this for is a balance leads, to balance them. The Prius already has its own BMS, and if these voltages differ by very much, it'll throw that relay over there and disconnect. If the voltages are too high, the voltages are too low. If the temperature is too high, 130, this battery will disconnect. We've got some fiberglass plastic that goes in here on both sides, and this is how we protect it from the metal case. So what does the battery do? Well, we've got the very first BMS lead. There's one per block. So we've got our first one here. This series, it has a double pair series, and it goes 2, 4, 6 underneath, and then it jumps up 2, so that'd be 8, and then 10. So we got 2 here and 2 here, and this basically just goes 2, 2, 2, up, 2, 2. All right, so that's a 2P, 2 parallel, 5S configuration. And then this will jump to the next battery. See there? So we got a double lead jumper, and these are heavy duty leads. These are 10 gauge. So, we could get away with a lot of amps, especially with this shorter distance. These wires can carry a lot more. This is the main battery lead, and this is the only place here, and the very end is the only time I've ever bridged the two batteries with a heavy wire. Now, on the other batteries, between every battery, I have just a balance lead. And this is a balance lead just to keep these two batteries balanced. So every one of these, you're going to find a balance lead. There's one there, there's one there, and that's just to keep the two batteries that are paired together the same voltage. So heavy duty at the front, heavy duty at the very end, and then small balance leads in between every battery. Okay, that will keep these in parallel, and hopefully we won't even need this. When I set this up, everything was 3.3 voltage. That's how they came shipped. When I hooked it up, there was a 0.1 volt distance between the highest and the lowest block. So we got 14 blocks here. Between all 14, there's only a 0.1 volt difference. And now while I'm driving down the road, sometimes it shows 0.1, 0.2. I really don't think that that's anything. I just think it has to do with these leads. Perhaps the leads are not given quite the right voltage. So we're going to keep a monitor on that. We've been driving for a while. I actually have a lot of miles racked up on these batteries. One of the reasons I didn't tell anybody where the battery manufacturer was is if these batteries don't last, I don't want to be the one that recommended them. All right, so we're gonna wait till at least part 3, until we have at least 10 to 20,000 miles on these and see no degradation. So, like I was saying, every one of these have a balanced lead. This, they start out on the negative. Take a video of before you take apart anything. Take a video of it all because it does some wacky things. We've got a balanced lead from the Prius on the negative, 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 and this follows the same pattern until you get to 10. And then it switches from negative to positive. Positive, 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 positive. So I don't know why they did that, but you're at mama's house, you got to play by mama's rules. So just take a picture of everything. That way you can follow their lead. That way, when you pull this up on your phone, all the voltages can be seen without individually testing them, without buying another piece of equipment. All right, so let's take a look at the back. All right, so in the front, we have all the series jumpers, to connect the 5 pair blocks to the next 5 pair block. And here, they're series as well, but it doesn't bridge to the next battery. So you've got the bottom of one coming, and then they go from the bottom of the battery, hits the middle, and the second to the bottom hits the top. And then it continues on with 1, and then see the arrows coming backwards with 2. So this top one goes to the second to the bottom, and the second from the top is bridged down to the bottom. So we don't have any cross bridges. All these bridges are going top and bottom. All right, so 3 is coming from the bottom up. 4, see the arrow? It's coming from the top down. So this all continues on, and there's still my personal BMS, but there's no Prius BMS here. Everything seems normal, well and good, but you get to 10, and I'll show you a clip of the original battery. On 10, they split the block. And I don't know why they did that, because you've got from 1 to 10, that's 140 volts. Let's call it 130 because they split the 10. So I couldn't actually do that. So what I did, because I have 5 per block, I don't have 2 like they do. I split 3 and 2. That's all I could do. And I thought everything would be well and good, and so far it is. But where this is split, you see the double orange wire that actually goes over to your fuse block, your disconnect, this fuse right here. So you pull up, it's disconnected, and you flop it to the left, you can actually pull the whole thing out. But upon a further investigation, there are wires that come over to this block. So apparently Toyota is monitoring this block as well. Hasn't given me any trouble, but you should be aware of that. Don't try anything crazy. If it were me, I'd go back over to 7, and I split between 7 and 8. But again, mama's house, mama's rules. So we split 10. It wasn't a fair split. It was 3 and 2. So far, so good. Again, under the regular battery monitoring system, everything looks good. We're within 1 or 2 tenths of a volt. If it didn't look good, over here we've got our dual relays for the positive and the negative, and this looks like it must be an amp meter / voltmeter. So that's that. With the metal box, the metal lid, when I first put this in, obviously it was like a kid with a new Christmas present. And I drove up and down the road, monitoring temperatures, monitoring voltages. Everything was fine. And then you get to real life, and you have to box this up, because you've got a 3-year-old in the front seat, and if she comes back here and plays with the nice shiny things, trouble. So, but using the fan, this fan hooks up and it blows through the metal case. Using that fan, the temperatures are still higher than using no case at all. So definitely the case is troublesome. But what we plan on doing is, let me show you. So this is the case that came with the batteries. This thing is sturdy. All right, see pressure I'm putting on that? You cannot bend this thing. All right, so of course I got extra batteries. If I was to do it over again, I would slice these things probably in half, and I would use the half. See, they're all interconnected. I would probably slice the end cap off. Just leave the half ring, and then with this whole thing sliced in half, I have a 4 tall battery block, so we'd get rid of one layer. That would leave us with a layer that's 4 high, and we would run the batteries through these half slivers. But this is how it came. And if you're curious if this doesn't really work with your mind, what we've done, this is one battery. So this is in parallel. So then basically our next battery just comes, and we've got two, of course, amount of batteries, 2. All right, so it looks something like that. It would go from negative to positive through 3 sets, jump up. This would jump to here, this would jump to there, and then this one would continue on. There would still be the set here. This would continue on to this other set. So this would be 1, 2, your imaginary 1 right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So your 5, 2p, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now by doing that, we have half the amps. If we had 3 batteries, we would have 1/3 of the amps. If we only ran 1, my concern was that there'd be too many amps flowing through just one. And I kind of like the idea that, I don't know, maybe I spent $400 for brand new batteries, 140 of them. I, of course, spent more for wiring and the additional BMS and so on and so forth. But, having double the capacity and having the reassurance of the amps being split in half with 2 batteries was just a peace of mind. Besides, if I went with a 3P5S configuration, I don't think they'd fit. I'd probably have to modify the case and put some spacers in between. And the heat should be reduced because, one more battery would be sharing the load. But, for the work and everything, I just didn't think it'd be worth the additional effort. But if I was to do it, if I had to, it'd just be a couple $100 more. That would still put our battery build out at around $800. So that's not so bad. I'm going to show some one more clip of me building it. But for now, that's it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the bottom below. We'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. And also we'll incorporate them into part 3. Also in part 3, hopefully we will get these batteries separated. We'll deal with the temperature problem. The temperatures do go up to 120 in vehicles, and that's just kind of normal here in Florida in the summertime. That's why you don't leave your kids in the car if you like them. But we're gonna split these up a little bit. We definitely want to keep the metal case on this. What you don't see are these fiberglass pieces going down inside, and that protects in case any batteries were to shift. I mean, nothing should shift because they're really tied together with these leads. If I had to do it over again, I would make my own copper bus bars here to here, and I would provide an offset on the positive posts. You know, flat and then come up, raised a little bit, and then come over flat. I have a different video where I make bus bars, super cheap, perfect bus bars, and no reason to buy them if you can make them for pennies. Anyway, so here's the positive lead, negative lead all the way down. There's your split, your BMS Toyota. Don't need your own BMS as of now. Relays. Hope that answers everything. Again, I'm going to leave you with a boring build clip. Just shows the process that I went through. If I had to do it over again on that one, I would make up all the jumpers, put all the leads on to the BMS before getting started, and make all the bridges, the short bridges, the long jumpers in the back. Make those all up ahead of time. That way you don't have to think. You don't have to stop what you're doing as far as the build goes and make these things and then get back into your build. So going to show that to you. Feel free to watch it if you want. A little bit boring. I'll try to speed it up. Have any questions, again, leave them below. We'll incorporate them into the third video. That's going to be a while. We'll try to put some regenerative stress tests on the battery and continue to use it and try to put as many miles on it as we can before making part 3. So part 3 is going to be a while, but stick around. We'll be there for sure. Thanks for watching. See you.